Date, Standardized Human Time, September 28, 2136. 18 days. That is how long had passed since the minutes-long speech, and the human ambassador hadn't been outside of this room since. I tried to occupy Noah by teaching him alien games and watching the happenings on TV. But while he never voiced his complaints, I could sense his agitation. Chow Sun visited once a day, logging every aspect of Terran culture he could. The Zerolian Prime Minister appointed him ambassador to Earth, and the scientist was eager to squeeze everything from the opportunity. He subjected Noah to a myriad of personality tests, as well as asking him philosophical and ethical queries. The chocolate-skinned human was happy to play along, since it distracted him from the waiting. When Chow Sun gave him a standard academic test in math and sciences, he was surprised to find Noah scored in the 80th percentile. That was much higher than expected, for a species that was hundreds of years behind our knowledge. The Zerolian testified before the Federation assemblage today, sharing his novel findings. With any luck, he would be the final speaker. These discussions had dragged on far too long for my liking. At least that signaled it wasn't an easy, unanimous verdict to war with humanity. Noah yawned, penning a final sentence in his journal. The Predator had been logging his thoughts throughout this experience, but would not let me view a word. I would love to know his unfiltered opinions. His secretiveness rubbed me the wrong way. I'm tired, Tarva. Wake me up if the execution squad arrives, the Terran said sarcastically. Good night. I studied the dark circles under his eyes. Good night, Noah. Sweet dreams. The human tucked his notebook into a table drawer and shuffled out of the living area. I waited for the sound of his footsteps to recede. Running water reverberated for a few seconds before the spring of the bulky Predator hitting the mattress reached my ears. My heart rate quickened as the temptation to sift through his journal called me again. Noah never has to know I looked. You know, the alien's fear has taken its toll on him. Ultimately, it'll help with being supportive and empathetic, right? I took a deep breath and counted back from 200 in my mind. Satisfied that the human was drifting off, my paws meandered over to the table. The drawer slid out without a sound, and I lifted the diary. There was nothing wrong with just a peek, surely. I flipped open to a random page and began reading the first entry my eyes landed on. September 17. An accidental smile sent Chow Sun fleeing in terror, and my heart is heavy with guilt. I'm surprised it took this long to happen. Tarva had to chase him down and explain what the expression means. The Zerolian has tried to accept me, and he shrugged off my apology. But he's afraid of us, deep down, like everyone is. Why didn't I wear the mask? Why can't I fit in, anywhere? When I look in the mirror, I've begun to see myself as a predator. If there is a future where humanity can be a healthy contributor to the galaxy, I don't know if I picture it anymore. We want it, but that's not enough. The simple fact of the matter is, nobody wants us. Even the Venmal are still frightened by us. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around them. Trying so hard not to break them, because they're fragile and innocent. Sometimes, I let my guard down, but that rarely ends well. Tarva said straight to my face that she thought I was a nasty-looking creature. No matter how much I try to forget about it, through all the laughs and conversation, that is what she thinks of me. Any feelings of attachment are one way, and I do well to remember that. Yes, there is a shared history now, and the Venmal wish no harm upon us. But they cannot be normal around monsters. Perhaps a better man, a better species, would cut them free, and never show their face again. Instead, I'll just return to this lie, and pretend that we can make friends in the stars. Dream on. I recoiled, guilt rushing through my veins. These writings sounded depressed and bitter, unlike the optimist persona he projected. Was Noah's self-image that low, because of me? That comment that I made to resell wasn't at all what I thought of him now. Perhaps cabin fever had placed wild ideas in his head, and his outlook was cheerier before the speech. My claws tugged back through several pages until I reached an earlier entry. September 6. Resell is a wreck from being near me, but what am I to do? Throw myself into space? The visor, the mask, none of it makes a difference. My face feels constricted already, and the nerves are making me sick to my stomach. My indecisiveness, on what bits of humanity to include, might be the death of me, literally. The Federation will have a field day upon our arrival. I wonder if seeing me on television will be traumatic for small children? Perhaps I will be posterized as the face of the new enemy. The questions the Venlil asked when I first arrived left me taken aback, and this will be worse. Governor Tarva is kind to help. Because of me, her species has lost every friend, and are left with a lot of primitive predators for company. Humanity disappoints on every front, the regrets must cross her mind daily. Yet she's too far committed now, so she sticks it out. My speech feels pathetic and inadequate before I've ever given it. I don't know why it hurts so much, when I understand they're all just afraid. Predators aren't supposed to have feelings, not. A pointed cough came from behind me. The human was standing with crossed arms, watching me with a livid glare. That's Private Tarva. Noah snapped, and my ears lowered against my head. That was the first time I ever heard the ambassador raise his voice. You can't just go through my things. You were supposed to be sleeping. I took a few steps back instinctively, flinging the book on the table. I thought you seemed agitated. And I knew you wouldn't tell me what's wrong. So I tell you no when you ask to read it, and you go snooping anyways, he growled. Well, congrats, you've dug up some dirt on the predator. Noah, you know I'm so proud of you, don't you? I whined, tucking my tail between my legs. You have no idea how glad I am that we met. Your kind never disappointed me. Humanity are wonderful friends that I am siding against the entire galaxy to protect. You're trying to do the right thing, Tarva. I appreciate your morality and compassion infinitely. But let's not pretend anymore. You have to repress your instincts all the time around me, and you find my appearance loathsome. My initial reaction was negative, yes, but I find you quite endearing. I didn't personally request you to represent your species because I'm disgusted by you. I've done nothing but worry about your safety since we came to Alpha. You mean that? Really? You're telling me you don't still think of me as a predator? You're my kind and charming friend. That's what I see when I look at you. You are the predator who convinced me to give humanity a chance. I don't think anyone else could have a personality bright enough to shine through that fear. Couldn't Noah understand our skittishness was a part of us, just like some predatory traits were part of him? There were certain attributes that were difficult to accept, but surely humanity could see how hard we were trying. The last thing I wanted was for Venlil instincts to have a detrimental effect on his mental health. Initiating contact should prove that there were few lingering fears in my mind. I flung my paws around Noah's waist, and his breathing tensed up. There was brief hesitation from the ambassador, his stance emanated tiredness and frustration. The human wrapped his arms around me, after I curled my claws into his skin insistently, and relaxed into my comforting embrace. The Terran ambassador withdrew. Tarva, I am serious. Don't go through my personal items without permission, ever again. I know. Sorry, I muttered. Echem. It's impossible to stay angry at you. Noah shook his head with disdain. You could get away with just about anything. The human stretched out on the couch, closing his predatory eyes. The lines on his face eased, and I watched as his breathing slowed. My own eyelids began to feel heavy, listening to the harsh rumbling of his snores. The big guy was so gentle and sweet, so intelligent and reliable. As I was about to drift off, the door to the diplomatic suite crashed open. Kolshan soldiers stood in the entryway, their eyes stretched wide when the predator snapped upright. Noah tried to collect himself, and raised his hands in confusion. Seeing that the guards were waving at him to come, he reached for his visor. I glared at him, and snatched it away from his hand. I threw the metal at the wall, as hard as I could. It broke into 2 pieces with a satisfying crunch. Noah looked stunned and apprehensive at the prospect of approaching the guards without it. He swallowed, then grabbed for his mask. My tiny claws scrabbled at his arm, and I shook my head in the human no gesture. The Terran ambassador looked uncertain, but stood up from the couch. The wary Kolshians weren't attempting to blind him this time. A soldier barked the word "follow" and began retracing the path to the assembly hall. Heated discussions were creating a clamor inside the chamber. We could hear it from 100 paces away. The guards pointed at the podium, and Noah took obedient steps to the stage. Surprised exclamations rose from the crowd as they saw the human in his uncensored form. Jerolim, the agitated crocodile from the earlier meeting, was emitting furious squawks at those provocative eyes. I shot a blistering glare toward him. "We apologize for the delay," Chief Nikonas began, in a cordial tone. "These are unprecedented circumstances, and we've struggled to reach any sort of decision. Has your treatment here been acceptable, Noah of the planet Earth?" The human dipped his head. "Yes. Thank you for your hospitality, gracious chief." "Good. I'd never let anything like the Gojids did occur within my borders." The Kolshian palmed an indigo tentacle across his nostrils. "The Federation, as I'm sure you know from the television, has sought all sorts of counsel on this matter. We reviewed your data sharing, consulted our own records, and brought in numerous experts to testify." "It looked like many of them had conflicting perspectives," I said. "Indeed. Historians, xenobiologists, psychologists, zoologists, sociologists, lawyers, economists, we had them all. Several individuals who were trapped within Venlo borders testified too, and we had our own internal discussions. At last, we've tallied every vote. The Federation could prove to the ambassador that some species did desire friendship. Any impartial observer would find humanity worthy of a chance, or at least derive reasonable doubt from their intricacies." My breath hitched in my throat, and I squeezed Noah's hand for support. The predator's palm was damp with sweat. Nikonas cleared his throat. "All right. The count of members who voted that humanity cannot be allowed to exist, or should be treated as a hostile party are 38. I tilted my head. Should we be disappointed that the figure was so high, or relieved that the proportion was only a little over 10%? That was a lot of species ganging up on a single planet, plenty of threats for the predators to fend off. Take that, stupid human." Jerolim chirped. "You're all going to be dead soon." "There will be no commentary from the audience until I have finished reading the results," the chief spat. 65 members voted for no contact or relations with humanity, which entails total isolation of Earth. I glanced toward the predator. There was more hurt in his eyes after that figure was read than after hearing the ones who wished him dead. Knowing how much humans craved acceptance, they didn't want to be shunned. The rest of the options had to be more promising, didn't they? Nikonas squinted at his notes. 74 species are undecided, with 52 specifying that they are awaiting news from the Gojid warzone. Those are a coin flip. Some people might not take kindly to the fact that predators attacked a Federation homeworld. Then again, it will be apparent that human morality is leagues above the Arxers. 107 species vote in favor of a temporary truce, or working together where necessary to defeat the Arxer. Any violation of express conditions will lead to an immediate return to hostilities. My ears perked up with hope. After cooperating against the Arxer, some Federation members might become ingratiated to humanity. It could bridge the gap to normal relations. Though I doubted we could call upon their assistance in regards to the species maintaining contention with Earth. "Who the fuck voted for that?" Jerolim squawked. "My species did, for one," the Kolshian leader replied. If that will be acceptable to the humans, of course." Noah nodded, shuffling as if expecting to leave. Yes, it will. We want the arcs are gone from this galaxy, and an enemy of an enemy is a friend to us. Thank you for your time, and giving us a chance. Wait, human. 11 members voted in favor of opening full diplomatic relations. This would involve forming trade, military, and border agreements, if you know anything of the sort. I suggest you ask Tarva for guidance, if those concepts confuse you. The ambassador raised a hand to his mouth, no doubt hiding his bared teeth. Perhaps he was amused by Nikonus' assumption that predators would have no concept of negotiation. Primarily, I believe that Noah was moved by the fact that humanity would return with new friends. It was a tiny number, less than 5%, but it wasn't zero. That counted for something. Overall, the results could have gone much worse. If the neutral, isolationist species were counted as in our favor, the majority of the Federation voted against humanity's extinction. Judging by the furious expressions sprinkled across the chamber, I wasn't sure every species was going to accept that. So many of you would side with them over us? Jerusalem screeched. Defend or appease humanity like they were a civilized species. Anyone who stands with predators is dead to the crocodile. The avian ambassador dive-bombed over the chieftain's cubicle and slashed his talons at the elderly Kolshan. Nikonus shielded his face with a tentacle, and nearby soldiers rushed to his aid. Jerusalem flapped his wings in a frenzy, pledging that anyone who stood with humanity would share their fate. Had the crocodile forgotten whose planet he was on? Other ambassadors launched into shouting matches, and a few made violent gestures toward the human. I didn't want to know what the unfriendly ones were suggesting. Several individuals were trading blows, grappling right in front of the media cameras. A pair of Kolshan guards hurried us out of the chamber before the predator could get swept up in the chaos. Noah shared a glance with me, and I knew that tumultuous unrest stirred his own concerns. This vote could be the start of a major rift within the Federation. Armed Kolshans steered us into the docking area, where we landed upon our arrival. Our previous shuttle was outfitted with supplies, since the chief granted us permission to return home on a prearranged route. The soldiers fell back several steps and monitored the human for any threatening moves. One of them curled their lip at me, briefly. Noah settled down on an empty crate, clutching a knapsack that contained his meager belongings. He met the soldier's gaze without blinking. Staring was a contest of dominance, whether that was the intention or not. The Kolshans gripped their rifles tighter and slunk back toward the entryway. "You're gawked at all the time, Noah," I whispered. Not saying it's right, but I don't suggest that smoldering stare down as a response. It'll tickle their instincts in ways you don't want. I don't care how they look at me, but they're not going to look at you with disgust and hatred. If they want a problem, they can pick on someone their own size, he growled, loud enough for the guards to hear. Aggression and protectiveness were not the persona to exhibit on the verge of our first diplomatic encounter. The Federation representatives would see it as a predator cowing his observers. I appreciated his loyalty, but humans were a little too defensive of their friends at times. Those soldiers were entitled to their opinions. Thank you, but it's fine. A lot of people think I'm a disgrace to the Federation and aren't happy that I imprisoned their people. I studied the guards' expressions, noticing how their scowls deepened at my words. Nikonus didn't even discuss consequences for the Venlil. So you agree with them? You had noble reasons for what you did. They can't find fault with that. Well, I've single-handedly fractured the Federation beyond repair. I guess that makes me a traitor to most folks. You're a hero to all of humankind, Tarva. 12 species in the galaxy who would even try to befriend us. We met what might be the only one who would try, before there was a shred of proof to our claims. Don't think we'll forget what the Venlil have risked. I pressed a claw to my lips and flicked my ears toward the doorway. The soldiers had snapped to attention, breaking their deadlock with the irate predator. That could only mean someone was approaching. The human needed to make a good first impression. Flattering us, at the expense of the rest of the galaxy, wasn't going to win hearts and minds. A violet-skinned Kolshan padded into the hangar bay, clearly resisting the urge to grab his sidearm. His steps faltered once he was within pouncing distance of Noah, like a magnetic force was repelling him from the human. The familiar officer crept to my side, using me as a living shield. How has he still not grasped that Noah doesn't have a violent bone in his body? Didn't our journey here prove that much? The Terran ambassador grinned. Resell. I was worried you were rotting in a cell. The Kolshan rubbed his forehead. I was, until the Commonwealth finalized our decision on humanity. Chief Nikonas agreed that I had a moral imperative to intervene, and pardoned me on all counts. I did receive a disciplinary mark for my methods, though. What do you mean? Noah asked. While Nikonas agrees with my rationale, we can't have officers running around shooting their captains. I don't think I had time to go through proper channels, but whatever. I see. So you're free. Why did you come here, of all places? Nikonas offered me an appointment as military liaison to Earth, and I accepted. My eyes widened, as did the ambassador's dilated ones. I thought that Resell hated being around predators. By his own admission, living around humans was a nightmare for him, and he couldn't fathom prolonged exposure to them. Noah stroked his chin in confusion. You want to be around predator generals, and talk about war tactics? Don't you hate the thought of having one of us within 100 miles? Forgive me if I've caused offense, Noah. Seeing your chemistry with Tarva, I think we could be great friends. The Kolshan shuddered as he tried to meet the predator's gaze. Others seem to adapt quicker and easier than me, but I don't want to give up. Truly. Do you think you can work past your fear? I asked gently. Have you identified what triggers such a severe reaction? I enlisted on a starship when I was 9. I don't recall another way to feel toward predators. It may take an unreasonably long time for me to work past those behaviors, and it would take considerable coaxing from you all. I can't imagine what this is like from Noah's perspective. I'm not sure I'd have the patience. If you'd like a different liaison, I understand. Sympathy flashed in the Noah's eyes. Resell, we are willing to help you every step of the way. I just don't know why you want to endure those feelings. It seems unfair to you. Humanity made me realize we are stronger than the sum of our fears. That there is something other than being afraid. I haven't got there yet, but I'm grateful for that. Can you accept my apology? There's nothing to forgive. Your emotions are out of your control. The edge dissipated from the human's sonorous voice, replaced by a warm tone. We'll figure this out together. No matter how long it takes. Gee, great. Now, there's other diplomats coming, so I'm going to make some preparations. Resell skittered off to the farthest corner of the hangar bay, and began prepping a second shuttle. That was a smart idea, since it was unlikely the entire crowd would fit in a single vessel. Hell, I doubted some of them would want to ride in a tiny box with a human for days. The first officer was probably thrilled to charter his own ship, for that exact reason. I watched the Kolshan shoot furtive glances toward us, and pondered why his species hadn't agreed to full diplomatic relations. Chief Nikonas didn't appear hostile to humanity, and displayed more fairness than I anticipated. The prospect of harm befalling Noah seemed to offend him, even. When my expectations were little more than a farcical hearing, a genuine debate was astounding. I guess Nikonas didn't propose a full partnership, because he doesn't believe humans can reciprocate their cordiality in a meaningful way. Nonetheless, I thought the Kolshan Commonwealth might come around as an ally. They had already seized the initiative by sending a military liaison. Even those guards were angered by my lack of accountability, rather than Noah's presence. Maybe it was just too large of a leap for most governments to make at once. Our Zerulean ambassador, Chao Sun, skittered into the room. Something seemed to have been bashed against his head, and green blood trailed down his snout. The furry scientist looked unsteady on his feet, but it was a good sign that he wasn't shy of Noah in his wounded state. It violated every prey instinct to wander up to a predator like this. Noah squinted with concern. "Are you all right, Chow-sun? Please, let me take a look at that." "What happened?" I gasped. The Zerulean sighed. "A bunch of people rushed to leave the chamber when the fighting broke out. Someone clubbed me over the noggin, I didn't see who. Probably because I testified with a generous view on humanity. The pundits think I swayed some hostile votes to undecided. All that, for sharing a synopsis of human morality." Noah said. "I'm sorry. I never wanted you to be assaulted. It's fine." The scientist licked a foreleg absent-mindedly, smoothing out the brown fur. "I'll look tougher now, when I force you to take me to your planet." "Ha! Even Tarva won't go to Earth." "Why not?" "You haven't invited her." It's complicated, but Elias Meyer, our leader, extended the invitation. Had an herbivorous banquet, live music, and a tour of New York City in the works. Tarva refused. I swished my tail with indignation. "It's a different story after the experiments, Noah. You think I was going to wander into a city with 10 million predator residents less than a month after we met? Before anyone ever saw how you behaved in packs?" Noah opened his mouth to respond, but snapped it shut as he saw Chief Nikonus leading a group of diplomats toward our ship. These must be the species that constituted the affirmative votes for open relations with Earth. None of them had been brave enough to make introductions yet. Our Zerulean friend was the sole exception. It didn't surprise me to see the Sivkits or the Paltans in the mix. Their centrally located territories were far enough away that they thought they could keep humanity at arm's length and control or minimize the interactions. Even predators wouldn't start that off-the-beaten path to gain a foothold. Us neighboring species were easier to invade first. Then there were the Yodel, the latest uplifts. Adapting to the galactic arena was difficult for a species that just discovered steam power. I couldn't imagine how the Venlo would have processed the Federation's vast knowledge in our infancy. Of course, if the Yodel's industrialism tipped us off to their presence, the Arxer might find them too. It was the lesser evil to flood them with information and give them a fighting chance. 22 cycles after first contact, the marsupials tired of the derision from their counterparts. Most species dismissed them as primitive, with a poor scientific understanding, and little to offer as allies. The Federation military saw the Yodel as a liability, and wouldn't take their suggestions seriously. Gaining the backing of predators was a calculated risk, to coerce some respect from their peers. So far, no surprises. The Thafki seek protection, since there's only about 12,000 members of their species left alive, well, not in captivity. The Neviks and Fissans are trading juggernauts that don't want to go the way of the Gojids. I squinted in apparent confusion. Was that the Mazik president among their ranks? Perhaps this was not the assemblage of friendly species, after all. It wasn't even a personal representative or aide, he was the only official dignitary I observed in the group. Noah tensed, as he also spotted the beige-skinned mammal. I doubted my friend had forgotten who interrupted him at every turn. Qpo was rather outspoken against humanity, mocking the Terran ambassador for his eyes and criticizing simple arguments. Is the alien with the trunk just here to make trouble? The Mazik, you said, the human whispered, echoing my thoughts. Them and the crocodile were the ones who couldn't stand my presence. Qpo swished his trunk. Your closing argument, about the hypothetical of friendship, was profound. We are, in fact, desperate enough that there is nothing to lose. Am I not welcome here? I didn't mean for you to overhear that comment, Mazik, my apologies. If you desire diplomacy, I would not turn you away. Noah lowered his voice to its minimum, and pursed his lips in mistrust. Damn Tarva. Those massive ears must be sharp. I snorted. No, your ears are just bad. The human sighed. That's hardly the worst thing you've said about us. I studied the waiting crowd. While the injured Nikonus bore no intention of making the journey to Venlo space, he opted to send us off himself. There was more sharpness in his gaze than fear. He wasn't shaking or whining, the way Riesel did. Though I appreciated the officer's efforts, perhaps there were better candidates to represent the Kolshians. As for the newcomers, the Zerulean was prancing around the human in circles. Chao Sun couldn't contain his excitement. He was the only ally eager to get up close and personal with the flesh-eater. Meanwhile, the Sivkid diplomat looked like she was about to pass out, standing across from a predator. Logical talk of borders and distance didn't mean much when she was going to be trapped in its lair. The Mazik president had the same suspicion in his eyes from the pivotal meeting. I don't think he trusted Noah's demeanor not to shift the second we took flight. There was a Dosur representative present, I realized, but the tiny rodent was hiding behind Cupo's bulky form. That size differential could only make the lumbering predator more daunting. That makes my count 10 species, plus the Kolshians. Maybe the last one is running late for some reason. Their representative might have had a panic attack. You're going to take the yodel? I thought humans already invented the wheel, the Nevik representative sneered. A few chuckles came from the gathering, and even the Kolshian chief struggled to maintain a neutral expression. The yodel glowered at his critic, then fired a nervous glance toward the human. I suppose the general assumption was that predators would shun any species with weaker technology. It was tough to imagine that friendship was their end rather than the means. If anything, I think supposed weakness roused the Terran's protectiveness. Noah and Sarah were most partial to us in our moments of vulnerability. Judging by how my friend's lips curved down, he wasn't pleased with the Nevik's humiliation of their peer. We have plenty to offer, Tassa, the marsupial snapped. Maybe these predators will be less stupid than you, and see that. Tassa flicked her ears. Like what? Name one thing that makes you valuable, especially compared to the rest of us. For one thing, we're the only ones here who weren't around for that vote. You know, the one where you unanimously decided to wipe out all life on Earth. Even the Venlil have that baggage. Silence fell over the assemblage. Trepidation played at the representatives' expressions, as the fiery yodel reminded them of their prior decisions. Perhaps I could afford to issue a formal apology on that matter myself, though it hadn't been my government that arrived at that conclusion. It must be tough for the predators to forget our role in their planned extinction. Humanity welcomes all parties, of all backgrounds. The ambassador cleared his throat, irritation flashing in his eyes. There's no need for divisive rhetoric, or to prove yourselves by putting others down. We're a small group, we need to band together. He's right. There's too much at stake here. Quit acting like children, I growled. Gosh. On that unpleasant note, I must warn you that siding with US may put you at odds with your friends and neighbors. This is your last chance to turn back. Noah blinked in surprise, as every party lingered. That was a risk they already considered leaving the acrimonious conference. All right then. Let's board a shuttle and get this show underway. The UN would be delighted to receive a proper diplomatic envoy, but I knew I had to temper their expectations. There would be missteps along the way, and few species would act as casual as us. It took a long time to be comfortable around predators. Familiarity was the final phase of the adjustment period, which certain prey sapients might never achieve. At least now, humanity knew where they stood with the Federation. The humans' actions in the past few days were a showcase of why I was right about them. It brought me relief to see such vindication. The dishonorable tactics persisted into our home system, sneaking their transports into orbit through diversions. The good, old predatory ruse, these hunter bastards never changed. It baffled me why they didn't commence an orbital raid on the planet, to soften up our populace. Then, I realized that the arrogant apes thought they could get people to come with them, willingly. The Terran's supposed rescue attempts targeted children, who were the most susceptible to suggestion. I'm sure they predicted the stampede casualties a ruthless invasion would cause. Every clip I saw was the image of death, and humans baiting their livestock into submission with false kindness. The higher-ups wouldn't allow ships like mine to attack human positions, due to the fact that they overlapped with civilian dwellings. I didn't want any innocents to die, but I knew it was a kindness to spare them from predatory possession. This was our lone chance to regain control in a timely manner. The only way to get any terrified innocents out alive. We should have taken the shot, before the predators got more entrenched. Who knows what brainwashing techniques they're employing on our people. Prime Minister Pyrie lost it with me the third time I pressed her with a bombing scheme. She said the collateral damage was unacceptable, and was livid at the proposal. My ship was reassigned to a patrol route by our largest colony for an indefinite duration. Barring a secondary invasion, I was out of the game. When a message came from the Union government, after several days of silence, I couldn't play it quick enough. I hope we're being recalled to the cradle. Pyrie's had us in timeout for long enough, I growled. Zarn closed the soundproofed door to the briefing room behind us. It must be stressful, knowing that they're on your own world. I knew humans were a conquering species, but it's another thing to see them in action. Why hasn't the fucking Federation come to our aid? The cowards must be scared to raise a claw in our defense, I sneered. They're just watching. It'll be them the humans come for next. Perhaps they think the predatory expansion will end with us. A foolhardy notion. Their kind always want more, the doctor said. I know, Zarn. Shit, let's see what humans VE done to cities and children this time. No sense delaying. I cast the holopad message to the projector. Holographic footage of the Arxer raiding our homeworld flickered to life, and my spines bristled. Explosions ravaged our planet, wiping out swaths of civilians in one fell swoop. Realization washed over me like a cold shower, as the pieces began to fit into place. It was so obvious. Of course, the predators were working together, the humans were the brains of the operation. They took out our defenses, so that the red carpet was rolled out for the other sadistic monsters. It was a matter of divvying up the cattle, and finishing off what was left of our populace. My eyes narrowed with fury. I was so tired of seeing my world exploited by psychotic beasts who preyed upon the helpless. The amount of death I witnessed in my career was more than anyone should have to endure. Now, billions of souls were about to be whisked away by the two freaks of the galaxy. Unless Gojid forces cheated death, the rock I called home was no more. Why was nature so uncaring and unfair? No matter how much I tried, there was never any way that I could make the predators' suffering match ours. Our existence was agony and terror, a living hell. They can't destroy our cradle. I spat. It's sacred. All those people, gone, and for what? Zarn's eyes widened with sympathy. I am sorry, sir. If there is anything I can do, please let me know. Thank you. But, I blinked away tears, watching an Arxer bite into a child's arm. The humans got what they wanted. I'd like to watch the end of this. Alone. The acting first officer swished his tail, and ambled out of the room. None of the Takan's warnings about humans had done any good to prevent this calamity. We hadn't been smart enough, or fast-acting enough. This was the inevitable conclusion, wasn't it? Squinting at my holopad, Pyrie had attached a note to the video. I could almost hear the Prime Minister's crisp voice, and see the sternness of her expression. It must have been her final action, to pass this media montage to any active communication satellites. By the time you view this, I will already be dead. My bunker is on the brink of collapse, pelted by bomb after bomb. This message is being relayed to any high-ranking officers out of system. I hope it finds you in good health. There's no sense addressing the brave souls stationed here. Our fleet failed to restrain the inbound Arxer ships, with catastrophic losses. We were preoccupied with the humans, and taking them out any time they lingered near the cradle. The Terran ships burned into the fray, as soon as we abandoned our position against their vector. There was great confusion on who to fight. We figured they planned this scenario in cooperation with the Arxer. Then, the monkeys began attacking the Greys and broadcasting warnings to the surface. We intercepted signal after signal. It could be staged chatter, but they seemed surprised. Perhaps it was just predatory treachery, betraying an ally for the thrill. It could have been a dispute over the livestock haul. But this is the last footage I saw. I can't conjure a reason that such sacrifice and tenderness would stem from aggression or cruelty. Those traits are polar opposites. What a marvelous ruse, if it is one. Please, send word to the Federation and relate the unspeakable losses of the Gogeta Union. Beg their help. Form your own opinions, and see what is done with the humans' prisoners. A flash of movement snapped my eyes back to the video. A human soldier plowed into the feasting Arxer, tackling it away from the child. The primate was missing his gun, but swung a knife at the reptilian with a vicious look. His inky pupils were dilated, and his neck veins bulged against his skin. He stepped between the Gogeta and the Grey, shouting at the kid to run. What the fuck? Why did he intervene? I thought. Maybe he had claimed the child as his own catch, like Pyrie suggested. The Terran jabbed his blade into the Arxer's elongated nose. The gray beast roared in agony and crunched through the human's stomach with swift jaws. More mammalians rushed over to the kid, peppering the reptile with bullets. They carried the Gogeta so tenderly, shielding the youngling with their own bodies. Rescue was one thing, but it made no sense to die for their intended cattle. I gaped at the footage, staring in silence as the scene transitioned. A Terran fire team were surrounded by a school and fighting to the last. Many of the furless predators were wounded, yet they propped themselves up and kept shooting. It was as though a drug was fueling them. These broken remnants managed to eviscerate an entire Arxer capture squad by the looks of the time lapse. As soon as there was a moment of peace, a Gogeta child raced into the open and knelt by a human's corpse. He jabbed a claw into the predator's stomach, sobbing in hysterics. The kid showed such feeble emotions in front of those beasts, and their lips didn't even curve into a snarl. Two primates stooped to the ground and attempted to console him. A dangerous thought crept into my brain. What if the humans did actually care for the children? What would that say about them? They're capable of. Every part of me screamed for a refutation. I keeled over, clutching my temples in a desperate attempt to vanquish the thought. There was no logical way to override this narrative as propaganda. It was a transmission from my own government. No, no, no. They're predators. Predators don't have feelings, I hissed. They took your home. They took your family. I collapsed into a prone position, bawling. The more I considered it, the more I realized that all of my arguments circled back to humans being predators. To my trauma, and to the planetary history Zarn claimed to know like the back of his paw. Every sneaking doubt that I blocked out flowed through my mind. The Terrans rushed to tend to the civilians on our world, asking nothing in return. The way they prioritized the children was the same as any nurturing species. They only attacked military targets, both in our home's invasion and when striking the border outposts. The last remnants of a bombing run allowed a medical ship to pass, as soon as it was identified. Despite my beliefs, the bombers never so much as glanced at the colony. There was also the chatter we heard on the radio frequencies, expressing sympathy for what the Arxer had done. One pilot said he wanted to negotiate, but his counterpart's retort was that we despised them too much to listen. I wiped a tear off my cheek. Nobody but the Venlil ever tried to speak to humanity. I hated them with all my heart. Crumbling to my conscience's assault, I allowed the memories of that week to play in my mind. The delight bubbling in my chest, as I drew screams from a helpless human, was as fresh as yesterday. At the time, it made me exuberant, but now, my sole wish was to undo the cruelty. Riesel was right when he said I was behaving just like the Arxer. He was always the better of us. What kind of a man enjoyed another creature's pain? That wasn't the behavior of a hero who was better than the predators he fought. An unbearable agony clasped at my chest. It was a sickening veil of disgust and self-hatred. I allowed myself to view the event from Marcel's eyes, and imbued some feeling into the predator's mindset. The captain was a cruel individual who shocked him for the slightest movements. The days were unending agony, with no sense of time or place. He felt his own body withering away, and clung to sanity, recalling the kindness of his friend. How do you persuade someone who hates you, who has already made up their mind about you? Nothing that was said mattered, or was even brought into consideration. The officers wouldn't allow him to speak, and punished him for deceit after his repeated claims of friendship. For the crime of looking at the glass, his eyes were bashed in and clawed. Marcel lost interest in everything, and became non-responsive. There was the briefest glimmer of hope, seeing his friend Slanik greet him with empathy and care. He thought maybe he could get through to the crew now. The Venwell confirmed all of his claims about humanity, and it was obvious he loved the little guy, or at least didn't want to eat him. But the captain rushed to execute him, because he hated that someone listened to a predator. Of course, extorting every bit of suffering first, and making uncivilized threats. The human saw his life flash before his eyes. He felt afraid and alone. What was his crime but existing? Why was this happening to him? You did all of that, Savlin. How could you? I screamed. Marcel was never non-compliant, or of a predatory disposition. He was just sickening to look at. The tears were flowing freely now. I couldn't live with the knowledge that I inflicted such torment on a sentient creature who came to my ship in peace. By extension, the ensuing war caused the Gojiti Union to lose our cradle to the Arxer. All I ever wanted was to save my people, and instead, my actions cost billions of lives. I yanked my sidearm out of its holster, and shoved it into my mouth. Someone who had done what I had didn't deserve to live. I felt like I was thinking clearer now than I ever had in my life. Just a few more seconds, knowing what a failure I was. 5, 4, 3. With a detached sigh, I tugged the gun out of my gullet. It would be wrong to leave a mess for my crew to clean up and traumatize another person. Even if I hung myself, someone would stumble across my body. They would live with that image for the rest of their lives. My stubby legs staggered out of the briefing room and navigated to a maintenance airlock. The thought crossed my mind to write an apology as a suicide note, but that just didn't cut it. Staring out at the stars, I knew that I could be free of this guilt. The only trace of this would be a data point on the logs. After my disappearance, someone could fill in the blanks with quiet conjecture. Captain. Please, don't do it. Dr. Zarn shouted from behind me, seeing my paw hover over the lever. They can rebuild your homeworld. Ending your life is a permanent decision, and you will never contribute anything again. It will taint your legacy, and the Union will be weaker for your loss. I don't care about any of that. Why did you follow me? I growled. Because there is still more to add to your story, sir. The TAC-can raised his paws in a pleading gesture, inching toward me. Even if you don't see it, each day is a gift. It's a chance to do something for someone else. My eyes rolled back as those last words sank in. The doctor didn't realize why he was right, but he was. These final actions were selfish, the coward's way out, because I was too afraid to turn myself over to the predator's custody. What right did I have to deprive Marcel of his revenge? Death was too kind for what I did. Suffering was what I deserved. None of the physical pain could be as awful as what I felt now. It was tough to breathe through the oppressive guilt, misery, and regret. I have to go, I snapped. The doctor stiffened. Sir, you're not in your right mind. We're going to the medbay for observation. I shoved past Zarn, speed walking back to the bridge. My gaze met Rumi's, and I gave the comms technician a slight nod. The young Gojid looked forward to see his captain disheveled and sniffling. My pause moved him aside, and tapped the recording button on his console. "This is Captain Sovlin speaking. I wish to state for the record that Officer Riesel conducted himself in accordance with the highest Federation ethical standards." My eyes swept across the chamber, studying my beloved crew for the last time. It is my final wish that he succeeds me as captain of this vessel, and that any charges against him are cleared. I will be turning myself in for crimes against sentience. That is all. Astonished gasps echoed across the bridge. Zarn looked baffled which crimes against sentience I was referring to. It wasn't my place to persuade him, or to fault him for feeding me slanted information. The responsibility for my decisions fell on my shoulders. I didn't want the rest of my crew taken with me. The only honorable thing to do was to turn myself over to the humans, and accept my nightmarish fate. I rushed through the corridors to the hangar bay, not wanting to give myself time to chicken out. Whatever the predators did to me was their prerogative, but my expectation was a slow and painful death. It was quick work to board a shuttle, punching in the stellar coordinates for Earth. The predators' breeding grounds, hadn't I called it? A planet that filled my heart with hatred, that I longed to destroy with every fiber of my being. Starlight twisted in the viewport, signifying that my final voyage was about to commence. This wasn't the way I thought my military career would end. Very soon, I would know more about the humans than I ever wanted to. My mind was adamant that such penance was merited.